everybody, welcome back to my workshop and welcome back to my garage. This is video number 11 in my Elysium Rebel single cut build, and what we're going to be doing in this video is just going over the finishing process and final assembly. This is pretty much it. Final assembly is done. All the finish work is done. I still need to do initial setup on it. I've got it strung up now. I've had it strung up under tension for about 3 days now, just wanting everything to settle. Then I'll go ahead and I'll get the relief set. I'll get the nut height filed down to the correct depths for the nut slots. I'll get the bridge set, I'll get the intonation set, get the action all set up, and get this thing ready to go. Just for a recap on the guitar, it's a solid mahogany body with the solid 3-piece mahogany neck. I have carbon fiber reinforcements in the neck as well as a dual truss rod with the adjustment at the heel. I've got a set of my Sonoran Custom wound P90s in this, a single wraparound bridge. The bridge is a Protones bridge. Tuners are Locking Godo tuners. For the electronics, I got 500 CTS pots and a 3-way switch with a 0.22 capacitor. So let's roll the footage and see how we got to the place where we're at right now with this guitar. So I did go for TV yellow on this guitar, and there's a couple different shades of TV yellow. The color that StewMac sells is a little bit more mustardy color, and then the finish that I got for this one is from Oxford Paint Supplies, and it's a little bit more of a brighter yellow. You can still see through to the wood grain. I did have to put a couple more coats on than what I wanted to because it did get a little blotchy just because I haven't used this type of paint before. So it was a little bit blotchy, so I had to go until I got the blotchiness gone. But I can still see some of the wood grain. I used an oil grain filler on this, but I can still see some of the wood grain sticking through, which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to be able to see some of that wood grain underneath, especially when you hold it at an angle, you can see it a little bit. I couldn't be happier with it. Nice color. The mustard yellow is nice as well, but this was just a little bit brighter, and this is more what I was looking for. I'd like to give a big thank you to all the people that have subscribed to the channel and posted comments. For the most part, everything has been extremely positive. I do answer every comment that I get, so please, if you see something, make a comment. Leave a comment if you like something. If you don't like something, let me know. All that will do is improve me as I go along. If you like what I'm doing, click like, click subscribe, follow along with the channel. You can also follow along with my Great Guitar Build-Off. So far, I think I've got 2 videos out for that, and I'm getting ready to put out the 3rd video soon, working on the neck for my Great Guitar Build-Off build. It's time to start polishing on this guitar here. It's had 15 coats of nitrocellulose lacquer put on it, and it's been curing now for about 2 months. So I just hung it up and let it cure. The lacquer's good and hard now, and I'm going to go ahead and start level sanding it and polishing it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with using the Super Aslix paper. It's a dry paper, you don't need to wet it. It's more like a cloth than a paper, and it does a really good job. The paper doesn't clog up very easily, and when it does, just a quick wipe cleans it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with 1000 grit and then work my way up to hopefully somewhere around 2000 grit. We'll see how it goes, but we're going to go ahead and start level sanding this. So as much as possible, I want to try using a flat and level sanding block on this. So I'm using my hard interface pad first, and just going to gently sand with the 1000 grit. And I do want to be careful not to sand through anything, which is very easy to do on the edges. So just want to be careful there. I had quite a bit of bleed through, or I had a little bit of a puddle and some blending up here on the top of the headstock. Don't know if you can see that, where the black blended in to the yellow or to the clear coat and bled over as it melted into one another. So I'm going to try and get that out for sure. And this is just going to be a slow process. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to live with that little spot right there. It went down into the finish. I may repair it at a later state, but I think right now I'm going to live with it. So you kind of get the idea of what I'm doing here. I'm going to go ahead and continue off camera for a while. You don't need to watch a bunch of boring sanding, and then bring you back when I'm closer to the last few grits of paper. All right, so far I've hit it up to 1200 grit. I went through it with 1000 grit first, and then I went up to 1200, and it's pretty smooth. There's still a couple little low spots in there, but I'm going to go ahead and switch up to the 1500 now, and I'm going to go ahead and hit it with 1500 to get those last little bits out, because I want to be careful not to burn through any of the paint. And what I'll be doing here is I just take a few passes, then I wipe it and kind of look cross grain at it, or at an angle, to see if all the shiny spots are gone out of it. Yep, the headstock's good back. Let's get get the front. So to start with, all I'm doing is I'm using StewMax Color Tone Polish. I'm going to start off with the medium. I'm going to hand buff it in, and then especially on the headstock and stuff, because it moves around quite a bit. I'll hand buff this in. I'm also going to hit it with the drill, with my buffing pads on the drill, but I wanted to get a good hand rub in first on this. And then after, what I'll do is I'll go in with some fine polish after this one, and then I'll hit it with some swirl remover after that to remove any of the last little bits. So let's bring this in and see how it looks. I think it came out really super nice. So far, this is the best nitro finish I have done. If you can look across the top, I don't know if you can see how well you can see that, but that is just a nice, smooth mirror finish across the top. And the same on the back. The neck looks good. I do have two small finish flaws on this one. Right here where the black bled into the yellow, or when I was shooting clear, it let the black bleed together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to touch that up with just a little bit of yellow and see if I can smooth that back in, because I don't want to redo the whole headstock at this point, because there are a couple other finish flaws with it that, you know, this is more of a prototype guitar, so I'm going to live with a couple of flaws in it. And then one, I did it with the drill. I put a little chip, right, not a chip, but just a scratch right there in the yellow paint. So I'm going to touch that up with a little bit of yellow, and then after it dries, I'll hit it with some like 1000 grit sandpaper to smooth it all in. But there you have it. That came out super nice. Really happy with it, with the way that looks. All right, so we've got it all polished up. It came out really nice. The finish flaws are so slight that I'm not really worried about them, and I might just do a light relic on the guitar to kind of get rid of them anyway. I think that would be easier to do than to do a full refinish on the guitar. So I'm going to look at that possibility too, because there's nothing that you can see, you know, when you first look at it that says, wow, that's bad. All in all, I'm very happy with the finish. So what we're going to start doing now is going to start working on final assembly. We're going to go ahead and get the tuners in, go ahead and get the bridge posts in, look at getting the pickups in, and move forward with that. So let's go ahead and get these tuners put in. So for the tuners, what I'm using is the Goto locking tuners. Just chrome hardware locking tuners. If you remember correctly, before I did the finish on this, I went ahead and already pre-drilled all my holes to make sure everything was lined up and good to go. So now I'm just going to go ahead and get these tuners installed. What I like to do is I just put it through from the back, and then the bushing goes through from the front. I want to be careful that these don't slide around a lot on me, because they are pretty much done, and I don't want to scratch my paint up. Like I said, it's got a couple flaws in it, but I don't want to put more. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of gently run these screws in as well in the back. I'm not going to tighten them yet. I'm just snugging them down, or just running them almost down. That way the tuner's still got a little bit of movement in it, but it's not going to rotate any when I go to tighten the back or tighten the nut on the front, and that way I don't end up scratching the surface. And there we go. Tuners are installed. Line them up there, you can get an idea. They're nice and straight. All right, so we're going to be using P90s in this. I've already wound the P90s. This was done a couple months ago, so these have been ready to go in. What we're going to do now is go ahead and get these installed in the guitar. I am going to use chrome covers on these. I toyed with the black and the chrome, and I really kind of like the chrome look, as the hardware's chrome. The black covers, they looked okay, but I just prefer the chrome ones, so that's what I'm going to go with. And what I'm using is I'm just using some foam that you would normally use like for bass guitar pickups in the bottom. That way these will set in the bottom, and that'll give the P90 some adjustment room. Basically what I'm doing now is I'm just pressing the screw down in. I'm going to give it a light tap to where I can mark the location of my pickup mount screws. Then I'm going to pull the pickup back out. That way I can drill these holes in there and they'll go in the right spot. One thing you want to be very careful of at this point too is to make sure you know what the depth of your body is, because the last thing you want to do at this point is end up drilling through the back of the body. It's definitely a no-no. Got it set here to 6 millimeter. All right, that's good there. No holes coming out the back. So let's go ahead and get this pickup put in. And we'll get it, the wire threaded all the way through. There we go, there's that one. There we go, there's the neck pickup in. See, I think that chrome's gonna look really good like that. And here we have the pickups installed. Next is gonna be getting ready to do the wiring. So what I'm starting to work on now is I'm starting to work on the electronics. I'm gonna be able to get most of them in. I do not have a 0.22 capacitor, so I'm gonna have to wait for that to come in before I can finish. But what I've done is I've soldered my leads onto my input jack, and I've got my input jack mounted in, and then I'm gonna get my 3-way switch mounted, as well as my volume and tone control. Really can't see soldering that over my shoulder. I just don't have the right camera set up for it. So this is what it looks like prior to getting all soldered up. And then I'll bring you back in after I get everything soldered, except for the capacitor. We'll get everything set and soldered up, and you can see what it's gonna look like. All right, let's take a peek in here on what I've got soldered up. So what I've got is I've got my 3-way switch soldered in. The bridge and the neck pickups going to directly the 3-way switch and then grounded to the volume pot. I've got my hot lead coming off the jack going to the volume pot, and then my lead from the volume pot going to tone, and then I'll hook up my capacitor once I get it. I don't have the right capacitor right now, but that'll go to that center lug on the tone and get grounded to there. And then I've got everything grounded. I did shield this, and I was reading good connectivity when I tested it with the multimeter. So yeah, we're ready to go ahead and throw the back cover on this. Give it a quick wipe just to get some of the flakes and stuff off of it from the shielding paint. And we'll be ready to start putting the bridge on and getting the strings and nut put on. So I cheated on this one a little bit. I'm actually using a tusk nut on this one. It's already pre-cut. It was just the perfect fit. Too good of an opportunity to pass up. So I'm going to use that tusk nut on there. It's temporary glued in place, so I can start my initial string up and set my action and everything like that. I've got the bridge installed. This is a very easy bridge to install. This is the Godo, I believe it's the Godo locking bridge. No, this is the Tone Pros wraparound locking bridge. So what you do is you drop the smaller studs in, drop this in, and then these caps snug down and hold it. You've got individual saddle adjustments to adjust intonation, and then you've also got set keys in the back here to where you can stagger the bridge a little bit. If you need a little bit more room in the top, less room in the bottom, whatever, you can stagger those a little bit to set the bridge up. So all in all, I've got about a 1/4 inch travel in either direction on the saddles, and then I've got about another 1/4 inch, about 1/4 inch travel as well that I can cock this to side. So intonation on this thing shouldn't be an issue at all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to string it up with 10s. I'm going to let it set. That way I make sure my nut's glued in and everything. I'll get initial action set up, and then I'm going to let it set under string tension for a couple days before I go through, do final truss rod adjustment and final setup. I just want to get it strung up, get some string tension on the neck, let everything settle the way it's going to settle, and then In a few days time, I'll come back. I'll go through initial setup at that point, cutting my nut to the final depth for the strings, and also doing my intonation, setting the final relief in the neck, and setting the final action. So let's get rolling with get this strung up so we can get it under some tension and see how it's going to look, and kind of get an initial setup on the bridge and just see how it's going to go. All right, so what I've got done is I've got it strung up with some string tension on it. Action set a little low still at the moment, but the nut is way high, so I kind of want to balance the two there. But overall, looks pretty good. All right, that's going to wrap this video up. This has been a really enjoyable build. This guitar has went together extremely well. It's my first full nitro finish that I've done. It came out really well. I've got a little bit of wood grain showing, which is what I wanted. So thank you very much for tuning in. Until the next time, take care.